So we'll start off then with our first session for today. It's a panel discussion with distinguished leaders from different industries, IT, BFSI, and so on. Our panel today will comprise, firstly, George Oomen, who's the Director HR for Technology and Process Consulting at Cognizant. We have Jatinder Salwan, who's the Senior VP HR at Societe Generale. We then have Suman Akiraju, who's the Associate VP HR at HCL Technologies. So obviously the panel session is going to be moderated. We thought about bringing Arnab Goswami, but decided that that probably would not make sense. What we will give you is a clear, insightful discussion from our leaders on the challenges that plague basically the HR technology today, the technology in HR today, and what are the challenges that plague us and how there could be solutions to address these. So our moderator for this evening is quite a savant in his field. So he started off his career as a sales professional, quickly grew to be quite accomplished. He moved on to become a thought leader in the space, and even has quite a lot of patents to his credit in the behavioral assessment space. I'd like to call on stage Rajiv Menon. Rajiv. So I'd like to hand it over to Rajiv to introduce our distinguished speakers.
Thanks, Vandana, for that effusive introduction. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here amongst you all, talking about something that I've been talking for the last 10 years, which is all about talent. One of the things that is constant in our lives is change. And there's change in every part of life, and the rate of change in the last few years has been aided to a large extent by the evolution of technology. HR is not unaffected by it, although I might add that the acceptance of the change in HR has been a phenomenon that's come in recent times, and not so much over the period of time. Today, if you look at keywords, and keywords typically are indicative of the kind of times that we are in. In the HR community, there is huge allusion to the word VUCA. I'm not too sure how many of you are aware of the word VUCA, but it primarily speaks about vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which is essentially something that plagues today's fast modern pace of life, and the way things are changing in every sphere, and HR is not too distant away from it. If you see the way the HR landscape has changed over the last few years, it's moved from the times, and if there are people amongst here who've seen this industry for the last 8-10 years, you'll see that what used to be paper resumes have now become interactive video resumes. What used to be face-to-face interviews is now replaced by video interviews, asynchronous interviews, and so on and so forth. What used to be a single test written assessment has become a multifaceted evaluation of a person's human capital based on various sets of inputs, many of which is powered by the kind of data that's being collected from social media and the works, right? So you're seeing all these changes happening, and HR obviously is at a point where usage of technology the last 2-3 years has become really important. What business problem is all of this solving for HR and for the business as well? The key business problem it's solving is to get the right person, and this is a cliched statement, but I think it's more sharpened now in the newer generation. Is how do you get the right person with the right ability, with the right thinking perspective, with the right potential to man a job? It's a tough ask because with automation replacing many of the manual work that we do today, a significant part of a person's performance is dependent on what lies between his ears, and measuring that becomes very important. Today's panel discussion specifically, we've lined up, as Vandana said, a fairly stellar group of people to talk about their own experiences of how they are solving present talent problems and how they are adopting technology to do that. But the focus, and it's a fairly large area as well. But the focus of today's panel would be primarily on the recruitment function, how you're attracting the right kind of talent, how you are selecting that, how you are deploying that, etc., and how you're using technology, how these people have used technology to kind of overcome those challenges. We'll have a session, the session will run for about 30 minutes. And then the end of it, we'll throw it open for questions from you, and we'll try to make it as interactive as possible. So without too much further ado, let me start calling in the speakers. First on the panel is Suman. George leads the global HR technology and processes consulting practice at Cognizant. It kind of, I mean, I was just telling him before the panel started that kind of shows Cognizant's, and I'm sure many other organizations as well, their persistence to providing someone with a specialist knowledge on technology in HR. I think that's the key. HR's acceptance of technology is reflected by the fact that organizations like Cognizant have actually started putting in people that are focused on implementing technology-led solutions. His responsibilities include HR technology transformation and consulting, process optimization, decision support and analytics, collaboration and corporate programs. George has leveraged internal and best-of-breed capabilities for deploying a wide range of global apps or systems of engagement with a distinct focus on design thinking, interactive and gamified interfaces and workflows, along with integrated social and millennial-centric design and deployment frameworks. His function has won key accolades, including the Chief People Officer Leadership Award. George is a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt professional. So, George, can I request you to be on the dais? Next, Suman Akiraju. Suman Akiraju is an Associate Vice President at HR at HCL Technologies. He is a HR professional specializing in global HR policies, processes, and structural design and technology enablement to achieve efficient HR organizations. He is currently leading a team involved in designing policies, processes, and technology for HR globally. He is also responsible for HR compliance globally and setting up and running of the HR Service Center to move all operations to a central team for standardized delivery of HR operations. So Suman, can we have you on stage, please? Finally, last but not the least, Jatinder Salwan. Jatinder is a Senior Vice President, Human Resources at Societe Generale. He has over 2 decades of experience in human resources across fields. He now handles an employee base of 5,500 employees or 3 centers for all businesses across IT, ITES, and banking operations, supporting Societe Generale's global banking business. He has functional expertise in HRIS and is a part of the global evaluation implementation team of HRIS. And let me just take the liberty of adding a couple of more lines to Jatinder. He's also served in Indian Armed Forces. He's been part of UN mission to Congo. So he brings a wide variety of human interaction to this entire thing. And we hope to have a rich set of inputs from him. Set the mood and start off. I think let me follow a process-led set of questions. Question number 1 to the panel, let me cut to the chase straight away, is how have you seen the challenges for HR changing over the last few years, specifically on recruitment? What is it that you've seen changes? For example, what are the big key problems that you're facing today? How has it changed over the last few years? Skill set changes, requirement on recruiters, technology requirements, scale, global operations. These are some of the key words that I would want to kind of leave amongst you in terms of the kind of problems that you're facing. And to start it off, maybe George, we can get your perspective first, and then move on to Jatinder, and then to Suman finally. George.
Sure. Am I audible to the audience? Good evening, everyone. And thank you for kicking us off, Rajiv, this evening. You know, and I'm not necessarily representing only the views of my organization, but believe what are the forces at play in the industry overall. Clearly, you know, when you look at recruitment, I think traditionally organizations have always kind of kept the recruitment function front and center. But I think, you know, I was in a panel earlier this year, and you know, there was a reference to what we call the war for talent, right? And what everyone agreed was that the war for talent has been won, and talent has won that war, right? But I'm sure that recruiters in the room would probably want to disagree with that statement, saying that talent may have won the battle, but not won the war yet, right? So interesting circumstances in today's world. I think when we look around us, that equation of recruitment and talent acquisition is governed by, I would say, largely three forces, right? You have the recruiter, obviously. You have the business, which is represented by the hiring manager, and you have the candidate, right? And today, I think in my mind, at least, there are three terms which I would describe what's really going to impact the experience for each of these individuals in that equation. So for the candidate, it's all about personalize, right? How do you personalize the experience? How do you give, I mean, I was reading recently about Korn Ferry calling their, what's called the white glove treatment, or the candidate concierge experience, right? So how do you really take that pre-candidate engagement, post, connect engagement to a very different level by personalizing that experience for a candidate. And when you look at a candidate today, it's really, candidate is like a consumer, right? Just like a candidate, a consumer, like all of us shop for products on any of our retail portals. That's what candidates do today. They shop for jobs, and there are options for them. And it's very important that you connect with candidates at a very, very personal level. And that's where that personalization is key. From a hiring manager standpoint, I think the key word I would think of is kind of contextual, industrialize, right? Obviously, we would want the hiring manager or business to spend most time in doing what they do best, which is service customers. And in that context, it's very important that whatever they do is industrialized. When I mean industrialized, it's repeatable, high degree of predictability in the process. They'd like a standardized capability to decide on a candidate, or how to take a candidate forward. So I think that industrialization of the hiring manager process is very critical, and how you deploy as an organization tools and capabilities to deliver that is important. And finally, and definitely not to say the least, is the recruiter. For the recruiter, it's really about contextualization, right? Today, you don't want the recruiter really spending time sourcing, right? It's really how you make sense of the talent that you've sourced. And that's where context is very important. We have a smattering of of terminologies that are on the screen, but it's very important how you kind of converge all that information and really allow the recruiter to set aside any kind of legacy activities that they do, and increasingly have them play a sales hat or wear the sales hat in kind of engaging the candidate. So I think I would say that if you look at these three individuals and the critical role that they have to play in the recruitment process, that would be, in my mind, a summary of the forces at work.
Brilliant. I guess what I understand from what you're saying, if I were to kind of summarize it, is to say that if you look at the three examples you gave of the candidate, the recruiter, and the business HR, it seems to be about making each of them as powerful as possible, with insights, with inputs, and as many various perspectives that can provide. For a candidate, and helping him identify with the kind of role that he's doing, and so on and so forth. I think your focus seems to be clearly saying that the biggest challenge is how do I get that personalized experience for each of them with a large amount of data for them to make a decision. Great. Suman, what's your perspective?
Maybe slightly different view from George's. He did call out the three pillars, the three key players. One of the things that we've been thinking at HCL is, do we need one of these players at all in the whole process, especially that of the recruiter, right? We are talking about so much technology and so much information that is available today that can actually empower a hiring manager to directly connect with the candidate. So the question is, do we really need a recruiter all the time to manage the whole recruiting process, or can we just enable these two people to manage recruiting between themselves at all, right?
Right.
You're talking about automated sourcing, you're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, that can actually really do the sourcing and screening for you, right? Which traditionally was being done by a recruiter. That was the service or the start of the service that a recruiter was actually providing to a hiring manager. Now, if I can do all that through a machine and then supply these stack ranked list of resumes saying that based on your job description, this is the best fit for you, then do I really need to have the recruiter do that for me? So let's take that part out and let's connect the hiring manager directly with the resume pool and let him choose who he wants to. Then we usually do scheduling of interviews. Now with so much of automated scheduling that's available where again it's like a marketplace for the candidate and for the hiring manager to figure out saying, hey, I'm available at these slots, or even better, I can do an asynchronous interview. I record my questions at a different time, the guy responds at a different point in time, and then I don't even need to read the interviews anymore. They're getting transcribed, they're getting automatically scored based on the transcription, and that's available for the hiring manager. So probably the stage where a recruiter comes in is, yes, you need to still provide that personal connect so that the candidate remains engaged, and maybe that's about the role that the recruiter will start playing in the future. Maybe that's where we'll, all of us have to change as recruiting professionals going forward.
So you are essentially saying that recruiter as a person could become a redundant function, and technology would take that over. Is that what
I
you
wouldn't
would
say redundant, but definitely the role will have a significant shift in the way the person will have to
Sure,
play it in the
sure.
future. So maybe I'll do more of bringing in market intelligence, talent segment analysis, and things like that, rather than doing the administrative work of scoring resumes and passing it on to you and helping you schedule interviews.
Good. There's a reason why I put Jatinder last, right? Because I know if I start with Jatinder, he would give his perspective, which is typically going to be, I presume at this point of time, and I've not heard him yet, exactly opposite to what you said, in a sense. So I'm doing Arnab's role here. I'm trying to rabble rouse and create a bit of interest here. So let me see.
I'm audible at the back there? Yeah, great. So, okay, George and Suman, both I agree partially, but you talked about challenges. So what are the challenges that we are facing? I'll straight away try to correlate to what changes have happened in the past whatever time I've been in this business. What has changed is two things. First, the hiring manager's requirements have changed. So no longer does the hiring manager want that guy which is described in the job description. So
Right.
typically, I mean, one of the greatest things that I heard recently, my deputy CEO came and said, Jatinder, we are not getting this. Okay, so we are not getting this. So I said, you have to translate this. Does it fit into a JD? He says, you're getting guys, but they don't have this. So what is changing is, in our field and where I work, each hiring manager has a specific need or a vision of what he or she wants in the system. What kind of talent will fit. Now those variables keep changing.
Right.
And they keep changing from one hiring manager to another, which George mentioned. I mean, there was, and I wouldn't say there needs to be an industrialization and you should put something in place where you are forced to tell the hiring manager, boss, now we have a system, so everybody is supposed to be like this, so you might as well take this guy. You have to understand why one guy needs something different from another person, because the nature of job, the kind of work that each person or each team is doing is so different that they need something different. Now, on the other side, the other thing that has changed is every year, the needs of the talents are changing.
Yes.
Initially, we thought they would come in for compensation. Then we kind of started dishing out money. Then we found that no, they're not coming for compensation, they're coming for something different, work-life balance. Then we said, okay, let's focus on work-life balance and how to communicate that we have great work-life balance. And then they said, no, they're not looking for work-life balance, they're looking for challenging roles. So every every day, every minute, you find the need of that individual who you're trying to attract into the system is different.
Right.
So the challenge that I face is, as a recruiter, and my team, some of the members are sitting there, is we have to understand what the hiring manager needs and what the talent needs.
Right.
So now not only are we trying to find people that the hiring manager needs, we are trying to sell the job to the talent.
Right.
And we take a lot of time to convince the guy to, come into the system.
Right. Right.
So those are the challenges which are changing a lot of things. Technology is helping to, and this is where I agree with Suman. So what has happened is the recruiter does not have time for transactional work. And neither would I expect the recruiter to do any transactional work. If the guy is going to sit and do scheduling, I don't think he would have time to sell the job,
Right.
or to attract, or to find talent. And
Right.
I'll come to that, but I presume you would be asking how to mitigate these challenges. So I'll stop here,
Sure.
and I'm sure the audience will also want to contribute to it.
Right. So essentially, from what you're trying to say, you're saying that the biggest challenge today is probably to remove the machine kind of jobs from the recruiter, so the recruiter can focus on engaging more with the candidate and giving the candidate information that surrounds his newer and changing needs. At the same time, matching what the business hiring manager wants. Right. Perfect.